Hello, everybody. My name is Jax James. I am the NORML State Policy Manager. And when we had our live stream yesterday and I was chatting with y'all, I mentioned that I was going to come back on Saturday and talk to y'all about the ballot initiative efforts that are going on across the country. And here I am. So let me go ahead and pull up my notes. You can put any questions you might have in the comments. In the description of this live stream, of course, you'll find a link to the blog with the update and some other important links that you can take a look at and click through. All right, so we like to do this leading up to, the times where people are voting on ballot initiatives, and just to give regular updates on what is happening on ballot initiatives across the country, as well as referendum. Of course, ballot initiatives are where citizens are able to collect signatures and put something on the ballot. And referendums are a process by which a legislature must first approve something to go before the voters. The voters vote for it, and then it comes back to the legislature to create the statutes and the regulations surrounding it. So these are two different ways that people can be engaged. I see some people commenting Missouri and Texas. I have some updates for you guys today. So I will get to those closer to the midway and end part of my update. So now that we've kind of talked about what is a ballot initiative, what is a referendum, let's go ahead and go through, what is happening with these different efforts across the country. And first, we'll start with Arkansas. So the group Arkansans for Marijuana Reform is seeking to place a constitutional amendment on the November ballot. This amendment aims to allow 21 and up to possess up to 4 ounces of cannabis flower, 2 ounces of concentrates, and to cultivate up to 6 cannabis plants and 6 seedlings for personal use. There's also another activist group called Arkansas True Grass, they are also gathering signatures for a 2022 ballot initiative measure, which seeks to regulate for 21 and up again 4 ounces of cannabis from licensed retailers and up to 12 plants for personal use. Additionally, there is a separate effort that is going to be slated for 2024, which has been filed with the Secretary of State, which would allow 21 and up to possess 5 ounces and cultivate 4 plants. It also includes a social equity and an expungement component. So I do want to point out that in the blog post, that first link in the live stream today, that is going to take you to all of the links for volunteer opportunities, signing locations, links to find out more information about these different groups, some news coverage. So if you're wanting to investigate a little bit more, there is a link to signature locations for the Arkansas True Grass, and of course, a link to reading the measure for the 2024 effort. Now in Iowa, they are going through the referendum process, which is different. This is the process where they go through the legislature, then put it to the voters and send it back to the legislature to create the statutes. And these are usually called, no pun intended, joint resolutions. So there are 2 joint resolutions in Iowa, and Joint Resolution 2003 allows registered voters to decide if the legalization of cannabis for recreational use by adults 21 and over should be allowed, pending there is a pending amendment, that states that the possession, growth, cultivation, manufacture, preparation, packaging, transfer, consumption, and retail sale or purchase of cannabis or products created from cannabis by those 21 and up should be lawful. And there is a link if you live in Iowa where you can support that joint resolution. Then on the House side, there's House Joint Resolution 2006, which would also amend the state constitution to legalize possession and cultivation of cannabis while also establishing a cannabis market for retail sales within the state. Currently in Iowa, the state law criminalizes any amount of possession as a misdemeanor punishable by 6 months in jail and $1,000 fine, and cultivation is classified as a felony. And this is all while, according to state polling, a majority of Iowan residents favor legalizing the recreational use of marijuana in the state. So there are 2 action alerts, one in the House and one in the Senate, if you live in Iowa, that you can go and participate in, because that is the referendum process. Excuse me. All right. So Maryland, you may have seen some of the updates over the recent weeks where lawmakers gave approval to this constitutional amendment, House Bill 1, which will ask the voters, do you favor the legalization of the adult use of cannabis in the state of Maryland? State lawmakers also approved complementary legislation, HB 837, which defines marijuana possession limits and then also facilitates for automatic review and expungement of past criminal records. If approved by the voters, the referendum will take effect on July 1st of 2023. At that time, adults will be able to legally possess 1.5 ounces of cannabis or 12 grams of concentrates. Possessing between 1.5 ounces and 2.5 ounces would still be subject to a civil fine, while the possession of greater quantities would still have criminal penalties. Lawmakers will still need to enact additional legislation next session to finalize the rules and regulations governing a legal cannabis market in the state of Maryland. So that is going to be on the ballot in November. Make sure that you are registered to vote if you live in Maryland, so that you can make sure to get out the vote in November and pass that legislation so that there will be a legal market for everyone that lives in Maryland. Now, I did see some of y'all saying you were from Missouri. So now let's talk about Missouri. There is, so first of all, Missouri's legislative session just ended, and there was some bills to change the market and create a market in Missouri. They did not pass. So now this will be the effort of focus for the remainder of the year. It's a citizen initiative that is sponsored by a group called Legal Missouri 2022, and they want to have those 21 and up be able to purchase, consume, possess, and cultivate cannabis, while allowing those with nonviolent marijuana-related offenses to also automatically have their criminal records expunged. The proposed measure also seeks to broaden industry participation by small business owners and among disadvantaged populations, including those with limited capital, residents of high poverty communities, service-disabled veterans, and those who had previously been convicted for nonviolent marijuana offenses. Additionally, the initiative makes some improvements to the state's existing medical marijuana access program. So the good news here is that double the needed signatures for this measure have been submitted to the Missouri Secretary of State for verification, and we hope to see those signatures verified really soon. So stay tuned if you're living in Missouri. Now, there's also efforts afoot in Nebraska. Nebraskans for medical marijuana want to place 2 separate measures on the 2022 ballot. The first one is the Medical Cannabis Patient Protection Act, which would protect patients with serious health conditions and their caregivers from arrest. And the second one is a Medical Cannabis Commission Act, which regulates private businesses to provide medical cannabis for qualified patients. And again, you'll be able to find a link to view a map of signing locations and to learn about volunteer opportunities. So if you live in Nebraska, please make sure that you are involved with this effort. I'm going to check on the comments real quick. I haven't looked at the comments yet. Oh, we've got a nice group of states here today. That's awesome. Okay, great. I'm not seeing a question, just seeing y'all putting your states in there, and I really appreciate that. I always love to see where our audience from is and is where y'all are watching from. Okay, so we've got a few more states that I want to cover. And the next one will be North Dakota. New Approach North Dakota is seeking to place a measure on the November ballot that would legalize the possession of 1 ounce of cannabis and up to 4 grams of cannabis concentrate and up to 500 milligrams of cannabis in an infused product. It also will allow for the cultivation of up to 3 plants. The measure needs to gather more than almost 16,000 signatures by July 11th. So just 2 more months there. If you live in North Dakota, there's a link to volunteer opportunities and signing locations in the blog posted in the live stream description below. Okay, if you have been watching what's going on in Ohio, there have been a lot of things in the news having to do with that. Advocates with the Coalition to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol collected sufficient number of signatures from registered voters to place marijuana legalization measure before lawmakers. The citizen-initiated measure allows for the possession of 2.5 ounces of marijuana, 15 grams of marijuana extract for those that are 21 and up. Adult Ohioans could purchase marijuana at retail locations or grow up to 12 plants in a private residence where at least 2 adults reside. Retail cannabis products would be taxed at 10%, and municipalities can opt out of allowing retail sales, and a majority of elected officials decided in favor of the ordinance to do so. However, at this time, it appears that the lawmakers will not consider the bill. The session is still occurring, but the bill is not moving. As a result, advocates were seeking to place a question before the voters in November. So activists and political opponents litigated this issue in court as the question remained regarding the timing of the group's initial signature submission. The court decided that the initiative will not appear on Ohio's November ballot in 2022. Activists did, however, reach a settlement with state officials in a legal challenge that will allow them to preserve the initial signatures, provided the General Assembly with the second opportunity to consider the proposed statute, and then establish a clear path to ballot access in 2023. Now, separate from this ballot initiative effort, Ohio NORML is working with partners to target municipalities across the state for local measures that seek to eliminate criminal and civil penalties for marijuana possession. The executive director for the NORML Appalachia of Ohio says, and I'm sorry, his name is Don Keeney. He says, "We will continue to aggressively pursue decriminalization of marijuana in our state. Our work with the ballot initiative proves without a doubt that ordinary citizens can do extraordinary things. This form of direct democracy gives us personal rights and personal freedoms that you may not know that you have." So in Ohio, looks like there will be a 2023 opportunity as well as some local actions happening in the meantime. Moving on to Oklahoma, there are 3 ballot initiative efforts pending in Oklahoma. And at one point, all 3 of the groups were responding to legal challenges, which, when they occurred, pauses the signature collection efforts. However, back in April, the court decided that the language for one of these efforts, called SQ 820, is constitutionally sufficient. So SQ 820 signature drive is now back underway with less than 90 days remaining to gather the minimum 177,958 signatures to get to the initiative on the 2022 ballot. So SQ 820 is sponsored by New Approach PAC, and it wants to allow adults 21 and older to purchase and possess up to 1 ounce of cannabis and grow up to 6 mature plants and 6 seedlings. The measure also provides a pathway for resentencing and expungement of criminal records. Because SQ 820 doesn't alter the Oklahoma Constitution, there's actually fewer signatures needed to place it on the ballot for the to place the measure on the ballot in November than the other 2 initiative efforts that are underway. Now, those 2 efforts in Oklahoma are being sponsored by a group called Oklahomans for Responsible Cannabis Action, also known as ORCA. And there are 2 of those there. So there's SQ 818, the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Enforcement and Anti-Corruption Act, which seeks to expand and revise the state's medical cannabis program. And then there's also SQ 819, the Oklahoma Marijuana Regulation Right to Use Act, which legalizes the possession of up to 8 ounces of marijuana for those 21 and up. You can purchase the marijuana from a state licensed retailer, or you can home cultivate up to 12 plants. And those who grow at home may legally possess the total yield of their plants, which is a cool little caveat there. We've got 2 more states to go before I'm going to come back over and take a look at the comments. And the next state is South Dakota. So after the Supreme Court nullified the results of the 2020 statewide vote to legalize the use of cannabis, South Dakotans for Better Marijuana Laws have amended their language and are seeking to pass a new 2022 legislative initiative. The group has submitted over 19,000 signatures from voters, and advocates need at least 16,961 signatures from voters in order to qualify for the ballot initiative. So hopefully we'll hear back on the verification of these signatures soon. All right, last one is Texas. I've seen a couple of y'all commenting that you're from Texas. So I'm excited to be able to give this update to you. So if you've been watching since the beginning, you know that I talked about how ballot initiatives are different from referendum efforts. Ballot initiatives are where you can collect signatures to get something on the ballot, and you can change the law that way. And then referendum is where you go through the legislature, where they craft what that ballot initiative would look like. It goes to the voters and then comes back to the legislature to create the statutes and regulations surrounding it. So in the state of Texas, our cannabis laws are governed at the state level, and you can only change the laws at the state level. So you have to change marijuana laws through the Texas legislature, which meets every 2 years for approximately 140 days. However, localities do have discretion for implementing things like first chance programs, diversion programs, and more. But for cities that are called home rule cities, they can also pass any regulation or law it deems necessary unless the state law prohibits it. So Ground Game Texas is working with several home rule cities across Texas to depenalize personal cannabis possession. Recently, voters in the city of Austin, Texas, where I live, overwhelmingly approved a local ballot measure called Prop A, which would depenalize marijuana possession and prohibit police from executing no-knock warrants. Ground Game Texas is also working on efforts in Elgin. Elgin has qualified for the November ballot. Denton's efforts with Denton area activists, they've submitted their signatures for verification and are pending verification. Additionally, Killeen, Harker Heights, and San Antonio are still collecting signatures with the hopes of being on the November ballot. So if you live in Texas and you're interested in helping with these efforts in these different cities, there's a link there where you can go learn about volunteer opportunities. And of course, we had Mike Siegel from Ground Game Texas on our virtual meeting at the beginning of the month. So you can go back and watch that to hear from Mike. Of course, that was before the election. And I'm proud to say that Prop A passed by 86%. So that's really great to see it pass with such overwhelming support. But I think in addition to, this overwhelming support being indicative of the broader support in our state, which polling also supports, and these local advancements are extremely important, what is resulting is a patchwork of differing marijuana enforcement policies based on location. So it's going to be extremely important for lawmakers in 2023 to make sure that they take the steps to enact statewide reform, because you can literally be in Austin and you pass an invisible line, you don't even know you're out of the state yet, out of the city yet, and you are now in a place where what you are possessing will definitely be an issue for you. So if you go to texasnormal.org, currently, we're in the part of our 2-year cycle that's called the interim session or interim. And in the interim, they have what are called charges. And so there's some different charges that will likely have to do with medical cannabis and decriminalization. And so if you go to texasnormal.org, look at our Take Action tab on the menu, and there's 3 actions that you can participate in to let your legislator know how you stand on the issue during these interim charges. Additionally, there is a runoff election happening in Texas on May 24th that affects both the Democratic and Republican Party candidates that are running for statewide and some local offices. So I encourage you to go to texasnormal.org and click on our voter guide tab to find out how those people stand on the issues. And again, we'll have an updated version for that whenever the November election occurs. And we'll be making sure to be in touch with any cities that have those measures that are being worked on by Ground Game Texas on the ballot to ensure that we are getting out the vote there as well. So That's what's going on in Texas. Lots of things to talk about today. I'm going to come back to the comments real quick and see if you guys have any questions for me before I go enjoy the rest of my Saturday. All right. So I see a question about the Safe Banking Act. So if you're watching yesterday, you saw that I gave a state update. So some of you guys may want to go back and watch that state update or look at that blog post. But when we're talking about actions in general, let me tell you what to do. You go to norml.org/act. The top actions are going to be all of our federal actions. And then you'll see a dynamic map below. You can take your cursor and just hover over that state, and it'll pop up and show you how many active bills there are. Now, just as a reminder, not all states are in a legislative session right now. Like here in Texas, it doesn't start till January of 2023, but there are a wide variety of states that are in session. And then if you just click that, it will take you to all of the active action alerts for your state that you can participate in. So I just wanted to let everyone know that if you are feeling your activist vibe this Saturday, I encourage you just click, do all the actions. Do them all. Do the federal and do the state ones. And that way, when they get into the office on Monday, they'll be like, hi, we have a whole bunch of emails about cannabis. All right, coming back over here. All right, I'm not seeing too many other questions, but I'm really glad to see that a lot of y'all from the states that I covered are watching today. So I'm happy to be able to provide this update for you. Always a pleasure to be with the NORML team, if you will. I'm going to go outside. It is a hot, sunny, beautiful day in Texas. And I'm going to go enjoy my Saturday, guys. So I just want to thank all of y'all for tuning in and remind you that you can go to norml.org and learn more about efforts that are happening all across the country. So you guys have an amazing, amazing Saturday.